Things are gonna get crazy.
Most everyone's mad here.
Hola, bonjour, and willkommen! Welcome back, everybody, to another fun-filled episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. How are you all doing so far, people? Hopefully you've all been doing well. You all had a fun-filled and exciting weekend. I know I definitely have, and especially now that we're settling into this month of December, yeah, I think it is safe to say the holidays are really kicking in right now, especially with the upcoming videos that I have in store for you all. And may I just say, it really has been a wild week last week, especially when the world was celebrating the passing or the unexpected expiration of the United Healthcare CEO. Seriously, it really was one of those rare moments where the left and the right were actually united and rejoiced together to go and celebrate the expiration of a horrible human being. A very rare occasion, especially in these political times. And I know some people could argue that, well, what actually happened to him, the fact that someone took his life, the action itself may have been wrong, but so is what that guy, that CEO, has actually done. Seriously, if you look it up, you'll discover the thousands of unfortunate deaths that has occurred on his hands because he valued profits over the well-being of American people. Like, it wasn't the bullet that took him down, it was karma. And this is actually a very bona fide example that we need a class war more so than we need a culture war. The real enemies of our society right now, it's not migrants, it's not women, it's not woke culture, it's not trans people, it's the 1%, it's the billionaires and the CEO executives, it's the wealthy people that should pay their taxes more so than anyone else. So I just want to go and put out that message right there, and especially just to add in my little piece. But anyways, we're not here to talk about that joyous little occasion. What we are here to go and discuss about is a whole bunch of different animation and entertainment news and a whole bunch of interesting things that we need to go and have a discussion that I think it will all accumulate to one heck of an exciting episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. So without further ado, I would like to go into the chat wall and I'd like to ask you all, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? Let me hear it, folks. Are you ready? All right, let's see now. Who is ready now? Yes? Okay, I do see people are ready. Oh, I see we even got a new fish with Edward. Thank you so much. All right, so it looks like people are ready. People are set. And with that said and done, it is... Oh, wow. And now JF is suddenly coming in as a new fish. All right, anyways, as I was saying, it is now time that we shall go and get things started. And with our first story, we might as well go into the news that just broke today, actually, or on the day that I am recording this. Yes, as we know, this year is about to end and we have a new year that's going to be coming up, which means that award season is just around the corner. And as you may know, the one that officially kicks off the award season is indeed the Golden Globes. But before they would go and officially start off their ceremonies and hand off their trophies, we got to go and check out what has been nominated. Yes, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association has officially revealed its list of the nominations for the 2025 edition of the Golden Globes, or the 82nd annual one. And the big winner in terms of who accumulated the most nominations is actually a movie by the name of Emilia Perez on Netflix, which stars Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez, in which it has gathered a grand total of 10 nominations. And before we go and continue looking into some of the other nominations, we might as well go and highlight who are the nominees for the big ones, at least in terms of movies so far. Let's go ahead and start things off by looking into my list here on Variety, in which we begin with Best Picture in the Drama category, right over here. So the nominees are The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nickel Boys, and September 5th. And now for the Best Picture category in the musical or comedy. And the nominees for those are Anora, Challengers, Emilia Perez, A Real Pain, The Substance, and Wicked. But of course, we are discussing about animation here. That is the main subject of this entire podcast. So let's go ahead and take a look at who is nominated for Best Animated Feature at this year's Golden Globes. And so the nominees for those are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Moana 2, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. And by the way, when it comes to The Wild Robot, it is worth noting that apparently that movie just broke a major record at the Golden Globes, where in terms of that ceremony, The Wild Robot just got the most nominations for an animated feature. Like ever in the history of the Golden Globes, The Wild Robot managed to break the record with 4 of them in total. So as we go and just switch onto here, which is the Wikipedia page of the 82nd Golden Globes Awards, not only is The Wild Robot nominated for Best Animated Feature, it is also nominated for Best Cinematic and Box Office Achievement alongside Alien Romulus, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, Deadpool and Wolverine, Gladiator 2, Inside Out 2, Twisters, and Wicked. And it is nominated for the music categories, where it is nominated for Best Original Score alongside Conclave, The Brutalist, Emilia Perez, Challengers, and Dune Part 2, and nominated for Best Original Song, where it is where Kiss the Sky is nominated alongside Beautiful That Way from The Last Showgirl, Compress Repress from Challengers, El Mal from Emilia Perez, Forbidden Road from Better Man, and Mi Camino from, again, Emilia Perez. It is also worth noting that when it comes to the other movies, by the way, along with Emilia Perez getting a total of 10 nominations, the ones that have received the most nominations other than that, they include The Brutalist, receiving 7 nominations, Conclave having 6, Anora and The Substance having 5, and next to The Wild Robot, there is also Wicked, A Real Pain, and Challengers receiving 4. And also A Complete Unknown receiving 3 nominations. And might as well go and highlight as well the television nominations as well. So if we go into the TV categories here, so let's just highlight at least the main ones. So Best Drama Series that's been nominated, they include The Day of the Jackal, The Diplomat, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Shogun, Slow Horses, and Squid Game. And then you also got Best TV Series in the musical or comedy category, which includes Abbott Elementary, The Bear, The Gentleman, Hacks, Nobody Wants This, and Only Murders in the Building. And then we also have Best Limited Series of Anthology Series or movie, TV movie, in which the nominees of those are Baby Reindeer, disclaimer, Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Melendez story, The Penguin, Ripley, and True Detective, Night Country. Now, one thing that I will admit here is that what I will be primarily focusing on is going to be the animation category, and especially what should be expected in this upcoming award season, because this does give us a map to what we may expect when it comes to the award season and who's going to be nominated and who's going to be a major contender. Now, you may recall in the last episode when I was with Logan that I actually made my predictions in terms of what I think is going to be nominated, and it's funny to see how I was kind of spot on with my nominations. Although, even though this is the Golden Globes, it is true that they went and did a little bit extra where now there are 6 nominees now in each of the categories, making it a lot easier to go and put in more movies onto the list. So yes, all 5 of what I predicted, or at least for the Oscars, they're all there with Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. But then there was also the inclusion of Moana 2. And this pretty much tells me of what we may expect with the following award shows, or with the award ceremonies, with what they could potentially nominate. We are going to see these names quite often, and when there are going to be those categories that will have less than that, rather if they have like 5 nominees or a little bit less, I think like the main 3, at the very least, that we are going to see again and again and again is going to be Flow, Inside Out 2, and The Wild Robot. And the rest, they are going to be bonuses. But then again, I could possibly be wrong, and maybe we'll see a little bit more of stuff like Memoir of a Snail or Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, that will be more apparent, for example. Like, when the BAFTAs are going to announce their nominations, there's probably a higher chance that we'll see something like Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, instead of something like Inside Out 2 or even The Wild Robot. You never know. But I'm expecting that at least those 3 with Flow, Inside Out 2, and The Wild Robot, those are going to be names that we will be seeing again and again and again. But interestingly enough, is when it comes to the bonus one, like, that, like, all those 3 and Wallace and Gromit, I come to expect we're going to see a lot of. But then there's also Memoir of a Snail and Moana 2. And I feel like those 2 are going to be interchangeable depending on the award ceremony. I feel like those are going to be names that we'll see not all the time, but from time to time. That sometimes Moana 2 will be among Best Animated Feature, or we'll also see Memoir of a Snail that will also be brought up, again, from time to time. Not all the time, but those are going to be the 2 that I feel like they're going to be commonly interchangeable. And I know that for some animation fans, they might not be happy to hear about that, because that would mean that there are some of their favorite movies that might end up getting snubbed. I wouldn't be surprised if there are going to be those that will mention Transformers 1, for example. But from what I am seeing here, that seems to be the case where, at least in terms of award ceremonies, like for those that are going to go and get that last nomination to go and grab, not necessarily win, but to be mentioned, I feel like, again, it will be interchangeable with Memoir of a Snail and Moana 2. But what is most interesting, in my opinion, is seeing how The Wild Robot is going to be a big player, not just for Best Animated Feature, but also in the other categories as well. And I mean, might as well go and bring up the fact that it broke the record for the most Golden Globe nominations for an animated feature. Now, I know, like, the legitimacy of that record, like, honestly, I do feel like it's a little bit questionable, especially when there is one category in there that, let's be honest, it's kind of a joke category, and that is the cinematic and box office achievement. Now, I've already talked about in the past that the existence of this category is like exclusively to go and boost ratings for the televised special, and that's pretty much it. You know, just to go and list like the big name movies, the popular movies that didn't get a nomination elsewhere, but you know, to give like Beetlejuice or Deadpool and Wolverine a chance to actually be nominated, or even something like Twisters and stuff like that, or Alien Romulus, for example. So being nominated for that is, I don't feel like it's a big deal. I mean, it is great that The Wild Robot did get nominated for Best Animated Feature, Best Score, and Best Song, but for the cinematic and box office achievement, honestly, I don't know. But also, I just want to say, I think I'm going to sneeze. Give me a sec. No, okay, never mind. Sorry. I thought I was about to. I feel something in my nose, but nah, never mind. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. You know, when it comes to that cinematic and box office achievement, I'm honestly surprised that Moana 2 didn't get nominated. I mean, say what you will about that film, but then again, technically what it did at the box office, especially on Thanksgiving, like during American Thanksgiving weekend, it managed to break records so easily. And technically that would be considered a box office achievement, but then again, I don't really know the rules of like what is a cinematic and box office achievement, so like honestly, whatever. Besides, I got a good feeling that honestly it won't matter like who's going to be like the big winner, either like The Wild Robot or Inside Out 2, because I think it's going to be Wicked. Wicked's going to go and take the win on this one. Or like they might do some weird twist and like they'll go and give it to like Deadpool and Wolverine. Who the fridge knows? But then when we do look into the other categories, the more legitimate ones, like with Best Original Score and Best Original Song, I will admit I'm not as familiar with these movies, or let alone with these songs or with these scores, so I cannot fully confirm if The Wild Robot really is a strong contender in this, or if it's just there just because it's a nice, pretty song and like, hey, might as well go and include it. Like, I don't know if there's one that's really going to stand out, rather it be like the Emilia Perez song, or at least one of the songs, or maybe they'll go with the Challengers or something like that. But I mean, hey, it is there, so there is a strong likelihood that The Wild Robot will be a name that will be brought up multiple times during award season, more so than the other animated features, even compared to Inside Out 2. Now, when it comes to who I think specifically is going to win Best Animated Feature, now that I believe is going to be a completely different story. I mean, it's one thing to go and get nominations and stuff like that, but who is going to ultimately take the win? Well, that remains to be seen, honestly, because you never know. Like, yeah, if there's a movie out there that's going to be collecting a whole bunch of nominations, but then there's another movie that would end up taking the big win. I mean, we saw this last year where a lot of people were thinking that, oh, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is going to get it in the bag, and many of the smaller accolades would go and give it to Across the Spider-Verse, so it would win the big ones. But lo and behold, that did not happen. The big ones, like the Golden Globes, the BAFTAs, and the Oscars, ultimately gave their trophies to Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. So I can imagine there is a likelihood, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but there is a chance that we may see a little bit of that same twist, where The Wild Robot would get the nominations, but not necessarily the big wins. And that's why I feel like determining who would be the winner, at least in terms of the Golden Globes, I think it's going to be a toss-up between The Wild Robot and Inside Out 2. I think it's going to be one or the other, because yes, on one hand, you got The Wild Robot that got all those nominations, and it is the highest rated animated film of the year, or debatably the highest rated movie of the year. But then you also got Inside Out 2, which that is also a very strong contender, not only highly beloved by critics and audiences, but also we are talking about the biggest animated feature of all time. So that is going to give it a massive boost. At least I can imagine when we do make it to the actual awards. So those are so far my predictions, at least in terms of the animation category, where I'm just going to go so far with just either The Wild Robot or Inside Out 2. Who's going to be the winner among those? We'll have to wait and see when the Golden Globes will be having its ceremony on January 5th. And with that said, now I would like to go onto the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you all think about the Golden Globe nominations? Who do you think is going to win Best Animated Feature? How do you feel about the nominations? And hey, we don't just have to talk about animation. Which other movies do you hope to see would end up getting a Golden Globe award? Let me know what you all think. All right, so well, let's see what we got here now. So many fantastic movies, shows, actors, and actresses receiving well-deserved nominations this year, though I feel like Disney will pick up the most wins, especially when you consider there are some categories where all the nominees are made by them. I'm most hoping for Inside Out 2 wins big, and that Catherine Hahn gets her well-deserved award. Yeah, I mean, I do understand, and there definitely is a lot. I do believe Disney stated that they got 35 nominations this year at the Golden Globes, like with the combination of both the movies and the TV shows. And especially when you do go back into here, like the television category, they have been dominating actually with like, keep in mind, considering that they own Hulu as well and FX, like, so far, where is it? Yeah, like if we go right over here, like they have Shogun, they got Abbott Elementary, they got The Bear, they got Only Murders in the Building, and then yeah, at least that's kind of like the main stuff that they got in terms of TV shows. But then you also got movies as well, and like, yeah, they got like so much. And I mean, like, in fact, if we do take a look at the where is it? The cinematic and box office achievement, a good chunk of it is actually Disney, including Alien Romulus, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Inside Out 2. Okay, so at least like, okay, just three of them, but still that is kind of a decent sized chunk. And not to mention, like, there's also the Searchlight movies as well that would go and receive a nomination. So if we go back into those, like if we go into drama, like they got A Complete Unknown that's also nominated, and then in the musical or comedy category, they also got A Real Pain. So yeah, they got a lot that is nominated. So we'll see like who ends up taking the win on that. Anyways, going back to here. To shoot out my prediction, I'm going to say The Wild Robot for Best Animated Feature. It's an absolutely stellar movie that's probably a shoo-in for the award. As for the rest of the nomination, I'm glad The Substance got some love, since it's a film as crazy as it is nauseating. Sing Sing was snubbed hard, but it's nice to see Coleman Domingo got a little something, and I'm surprised Moana 2 didn't get a song nod. I mean, I was expecting at least to see Beyond in there. Again, I just want to say I'm not really that familiar with all the songs in there. The only one that I've honestly heard is actually Kiss the Sky from The Wild Robot. But I mean, I guess we will see when the other awards are going to come up. I mean, it is a possibility that it could be like last year with how Wish ended up getting snubbed in the song category, where This Wish didn't see a whole lot of nominations. I'm not going to say that it didn't get nominated at all. I know some, like the Critics' Choice Awards, did give it a nomination, but I don't know. For me, I feel like with Moana 2, maybe we're going to see a little bit of the same thing. Maybe song, like, because I know that they're putting in both Beyond and Can I Get a Chi-Hu to be in the race, but I feel like it's going to be a bit of a mix. Like, maybe we're going to see it, maybe we'll not. I mean, I guess it'll depend on which award show is going to present it. Let's see. When it comes to the Golden Globe nominations, I'm quite happy with them. For me, I'm definitely rooting for either Inside Out 2 or The Wild Robot. And I'm quite surprised to see Moana 2 as well. In terms of other nominations, I'm happy Wicked got a few. And I have a strong feeling that one is going to be a major Oscar contender, considering the praise it has gotten. Yeah, there is a strong possibility. Like, some people are even saying, like, oh, Wicked is going to get the win. Which, I don't know, but... yeah, I think, like, considering what we are seeing here so far, especially with how Wicked seems to be the major mainstream movie that has received a Best Movie nomination, like, especially in the musical or comedy category, or, well, I mean, okay, maybe not entirely that, because there was also Doom Part 2 that did also get nominated. But yeah, I feel like Wicked is going to be a name that we are going to see quite often in this upcoming award season. Let's see. Here's my prediction for the 97th Academy Award nominees. My top picks are Inside Out 2, The Wild Robot, Wallace and Gromit, Flow, and maybe Moana 2. Maybe, I said. Overall, I don't care who wins, but at least it would be nice to see my favorite filmmakers hanging out during award season while animation keeps being toxic. Well, I mean, that's their problem if they want to fuel the toxicity. Not Disney, but I mean animation fans, especially those that still remain on Twitter. Let's see now. Who else? Let's see what we got here. No, I've already read you. Let's go with, oh, I didn't see this one. Actually, okay, we'll go with this and then we're going to go on to our break because, okay, let's see here. What a great lineup of animated features, including those not from the US like Flow, Wallace and Gromit, and Memoir of a Snail. I see The Wild Robot or Inside Out 2 winning here, and great recognition for The Wild Robot. I also want to give out a fun fact about The Substance. It has a behind-the-scenes story similar to Moana. Mubi helped distribute the film after Universal dropped it because they thought some of the scenes may be too disturbing for viewers. Yeah, I honestly heard a little bit about that with The Substance. It's like the little horror movie that could, and when it came out, it's gotten some massive praise. And I'll admit that, like, I've heard a lot of great things, but, a part of me is considering, it's like, yeah, I should definitely go and watch it. But it's one of those movies that, based on what I've been hearing, I gotta be ready. Like, it's one of those, like, based on the disturbing things that are featured in there, it's like, yeah, I need to have the right mindset in order to be ready to whatever I may go and witness. All right, so with all that said and done, I just want to go and conclude this by saying congratulations to all those who got nominated at this year's Golden Globes, and we will see who is the winner on January 5th. Now, we are going to go on to our break, our first break, actually, and when we do come back, we will have a discussion of what is possibly the most unexpected scandal of the year. So we'll stay tuned for that, and we're going to go and have that discussion. And we are back. Now, on our next story, I just want to go and start off with the statement that lately, it's been hard to be a Muppet fan, or at least to be a Muppet fan and to be excited for what the future may hold. And this is especially the case when we have heard the recent news that Muppet Vision 3D is indeed going to be replaced with the Monsters, Inc. area at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World. So there are many Muppet fans out there whose souls are pretty much crushed and to this day are still trying to recover from that news, even though that there are like some silver lining to that announcement that with the fact that Muppet Vision, that the Muppets are going to be replacing Aerosmith in Rock and Roller Coaster. But now to add insult to that injury, it looks like one of the most well-known Muppet fans is actually canceled. Why? Well, even though we were so close to ending the year, we gotta go and have one more major piece of stupid shenanigans. Now, to go into this whole story, this is all related to a social media account by the name of Muppet History. Now, some of you may know Muppet History. If you're a Muppet fan, then you know Muppet History. In fact, you may have followed Muppet History on social media, a very popular social media account that is dedicated to post nothing but Jim Henson and Muppet-related content. Rather it be about Jim Henson himself, or the Muppets, or Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Bear in the Big Blue House, what have you. If it's related to Jim Henson, then they would go and make a post about it. Rather it be something that's funny, that's wholesome, or something that sends out a positive message. And that was one of the biggest appeals of Muppet History, is that every day it helped shine a light on people's timelines so that they would go and create something that is positive and wholesome to go and maybe help brighten their day. And like I said before, the popularity of Muppet History was very big. In fact, on Instagram, it got over 500,000 followers, almost 600,000, in fact. And on Twitter, it got almost 300,000. But then recently, they made a weird, ominous post. And I got it from my source here on Reddit, in which the Muppet History account actually made this little statement here, in which it says, "Good evening. We wanted to take a moment to address some concerns that have arisen as of late. Before we dive into these concerns, we want to thank you for your continued support and encouragement. We acknowledge that we are human and have made mistakes in the past. We are always striving to learn and grow and appreciate your understanding and grace. We extend our thanks to those who hold us accountable. This community is near and dear to our hearts, and we hope to foster and embody the principles of Jim Henson in our words and actions. Therefore, we extend our most sincere apologies to those whom we have hurt, either through this platform or personal platforms. There have been a series in which boundaries with friends and viewers through messaging were overstepped. To the people who have been made uncomfortable by these actions, we have only ourselves to blame and ask for your forgiveness. In building this community, we have been overly protective, confusing fellow fan accounts for competition. We have not properly intervened when members in our community have caused harm in defending our name. We have overstepped boundaries and ignored the hurt it caused. We cannot take back what has been said, and we do not offer this apology with expectations that you will accept it solely on our word. We will be taking a step away from posting personal content on this platform over the next few weeks to reflect on our next steps forward in bettering ourselves. This community deserves only the best. We understand that actions speak louder, and we hope that one day we can regain your trust." From the creators of the creator of Muppet History, Joshua Gillespie, and his wife, Holly. Now, this seems a little bit weird, right? Because in here, they don't necessarily specify what is it that they're apologizing for. They seem to be pretty vague in terms of what they have done wrong. Like, they apologize for it, they're sorry, but they didn't necessarily say what it is, or why do they have to go and create this post and make this kind of apology. When people saw this, they were absolutely confused. Well, that answer seemed to come out quickly when it was revealed that, unfortunately, Joshua Gillespie is kind of a creep. And to go and give you a summary about what actually happened, I'm just going to go and read you here from my source on Know Your Meme, which actually has a pretty solid page to go and summarize entirely what the controversy has been going on. So I'm just going to go and read you the overview, which is the Muppet History sexual harassment allegations, or Muppet History drama, refers to several accusations of online sexual harassment leveled against the Twitter and Instagram Muppets fan account Muppet History, run by Joshua Gillespie, who allegedly has a history of sending lewd content and unwanted sexual advances to women through DMs. The allegation first came to light in early December 2024 with Instagram and Twitter user Malone Pops, whose real name is Megan, sharing several screenshots of harassing DMs purposely sent by Muppet History, as well as screenshots of DMs from victims of Muppet History. Muppet History made one apology, which he deleted, then made a joint apology with his wife, Holly Gillespie, which was widely criticized to be vague, like what I just did. The allegations inspired numerous of other gimmick accounts to disavow Muppet History and also inspired memes. Actually, for that one, I'll go and save for later. So basically, the long story short of it is the fact that, yes, Joshua Gillespie actually has a history of using his Muppet History account to go and slide onto the DMs of girls and try to hit on them in a way. And his advances, what he has done, they can range from pretty stupid to actually quite serious. And the ones that Megan has actually called him out on, including with her stories that she posted on Instagram, a lot of these include unwanted flirting, where he would go onto the DMs and try to flirt with whatever girl he could find on his account and who are amongst his fans. And there are some that get a lot more creepy and a lot more serious, where he would go and make sexual advances to those girls as well. He would be demanding nude photos from those girls. And whenever they would say no, then he would go into attack mode and he would really get angry. Apparently, Josh is one of those guys who he is not a fan when someone tells him no. And there are even allegations that apparently he would also send his own nude pics to them as well. Now, at this point, you might be thinking about his wife, Holly, and that maybe she is a victim in this as well, considering that it sounds very disheartening that her husband is going out of his way to go and cheat on her and find other girls to be sexually attracted to. Like, that must really suck for her, right? Well, here's the crazy thing about it. Not really. In fact, at worst, she's kind of in on it. According to Megan, again, apparently she says that Holly is quite well aware of Josh's actions, and she's quite dismissive about it. In fact, some even say that she's pretty cool with what Josh is doing, especially with the fact that Josh and Holly are actually a polyamorous couple, which means that when they like to get intimate, they like to have a third player or even more. So yeah, if Josh would go out of his way to go and find another girl to be horny with, then she's okay with it because she wants in on the action as well. So at worst, Holly is actually a complicit to Joshua's harassment. So yeah, from there, of course, Josh has received a lot of backlash, especially from the Muppet community, where a lot of other prominent Muppet accounts, they stood up and actually called him out on his actions and disapproved of what he has done. So basically saying that they are not okay with his actions. And as a result, ultimately, not only did Joshua admitted to what he has done, but he pretty much canceled Muppet History, or the social media account. And this is a recent post that he actually made as an overall response to this, in which he has stated right over here, reading on his post on Instagram, "Throughout my life, I have overstepped boundaries in friendships and relationships through lies, manipulation, and sexually inappropriate comments. I own all of that. My previous excuse for an apology did not address the situation with the seriousness and accountability that it deserved. It was rushed out and dismissed the voices trying to be heard. And for that, I apologize. I deflected and made excuses instead of taking responsibility. I am scheduled to begin seeing a therapist next week, not only so I can repair the relationship that I damaged, but also that I can one day be a better person, and I plan to seek out any other psychological treatment I need. I'm sorry to everyone who has ever been affected by my behavior, and I'm sorry to those that I have hurt and let down as they learn of this lesson. For the foreseeable future, Muppet History is ending as I step away to receive professional help and work to improve myself. The page will not be receiving a new owner. I am sorry for the damage I have caused, but I promise you that there are so many wonderful and creative people in this community who can brighten your day and inspire you. Please seek them out and give them the love they deserve. From Joshua. So that's pretty much the whole story with Joshua Gillespie and how he got called out this year. And I'm not going to lie, as a Muppet fan myself, I am absolutely disappointed. In fact, I honestly am contemplating which I actually feel more disheartened and more disappointed by. Like, I don't know which is worse. That Disney is going to be replacing Muppet Vision 3D with the Monsters, Inc. area, or the news that Muppet History got canceled because the guy behind the social media account turns out to be an absolute creep. And honestly, I might be leaning in on the latter because at least with the Muppet Vision thing, there is a chance, even if it's a slight chance, that Muppet Vision could come back in a different form. Rather it be on Disney Plus or in another area of Walt Disney World or at the Disney parks in general. And this thing here, like, it honestly sucks because I feel like this is a story we keep on hearing again and again and again, where people with massively prominent platforms would use them for their own malicious intent to go and prey on women. We keep hearing about this. We know this is not the first time, and it's probably not the last time we hear it. And I mean, for God's sakes, we're at the end of 2024. Can we go through the rest of this year without hearing any stupid shenanigans like this? I mean, seriously, it just really sucks. And again, once again, I just want to bring up, Muppet fans are already depressed enough hearing about what's going to happen with Muppet Vision 3D. They don't need this to go include into the mix. And I'm not going to lie, like, I knew a little bit of Joshua, not a whole lot, but I would say we are kind of acquaintances because we did follow each other on social media. I am aware that Josh is at least a bit of a fan of my works, and even with his Muppet History account, he actually followed me on social media. And I actually considered at one point that when I was doing Animation Look Back the Muppets, that I would actually have Joshua to be a part of my research team to go and help me out with my scripts, to fact check on them. I thought he would make a great addition. But he ultimately declined at the end of the day, which, I mean, it's fine. I still was able to make Animation Look Back the Muppets. I'm very proud of what I've done with it. But now I look back at that decision and I feel like, oh boy, did I dodge a bullet with that one. But going back into the actions of what he has done, it's just absolutely stupid because it's one of those things that I feel like if you're not careful, this could be something that could absolutely ruin your life. I mean, yeah, technically Josh got canceled in this, but in a way, it could have been so much worse. Because imagine this scenario. I'm only doing a hypothetical, but this is like the worst case scenario for any other people with big platforms who would do something like this. Like, imagine this. Like, Josh or a prominent online personality would go and find a girl who just so happens to be a fan of theirs that are following them on social media. And she seems to be a very attractive girl. Like, she's got beautiful pictures, got some nice curves on her, some nice TNA, definitely attractive. So they would go and try to do their little flirting games with them. And you know what? It actually worked. And then suddenly the sexual tension just got higher and higher and higher, where they would be sharing each other like nude pics and stuff like that. So yeah, they would have their times that they would be intimate. But then, then they learned something about her that turned the situation into a nightmare. Turns out she's about 15 or 16 years old? And then suddenly the controversy would just burst out, and then they would hear about that 15 to 16-year-old that they got pretty intimate with, and now suddenly they are registered as a sex offender. Even worse, as a sex offender towards minors. So yeah, that would just ruin them for life. Even if they completely change themselves, that will forever be in their records and people would just lose their trust forever. Now, again, I just want to clarify, Josh did not go and do this, or at least he did not do this to my knowledge. But I just want to go and put out an example that why doing these predatory actions, trying to use your platform to go and hit on girls or to go and like be intimate with them, like that's why you should never do this, because it could be like one quick slope, like it could really be like one little mistake that could just ruin your life forever. And the thing that is so stupid is that, like, you know, if there is one lesson that you need to go and take, is that online fandoms are not a place you should be looking for in order to get laid. It is not a place where people are interested to go and meet up with each other and then eventually have some sex. That's not the whole point of it. The people who follow Muppet History, they're not following them because they think that Josh is sexy and that maybe one day they want to get intimate with them. That's not the whole point. They just want to see funny posts or heartfelt posts about Kermit the Frog and Elmo and all those characters. That's it. And I just want to say, pardon my language, but the fact of the matter is, the Muppet community is not a place where you get bitches, all right? Y'all want to get bitches to sleep with? You go somewhere else. I'm just saying. And on top of that, I just want to also go and make a massive clarification. With the whole situation with Josh's behavior and how Holly is complicit, I just want to make a clarification on what he did not do wrong. Like, yeah, maybe Josh has like a massively high libido and that he is often horny. That in itself is not the problem at all. As much as there are asexual people out there, there are also people with high libidos that sometimes they would often have like sexual urges that can mount up very quickly and that, you know, they would want to get some relief off. That in itself is not a problem. Regardless if you have no sex drive or a high sex drive, that's perfectly fine. I also want to go and add that the problem is not the fact that Josh and Holly are a polyamorous couple. That is also perfectly fine as well. Like, yeah, this is a bad example of a poly couple, but there are tons of all other poly couples, like the grand majority of them, that do not think the same way as Josh and Holly. They don't go and do these kinds of predatory actions. So being poly or having a high sex drive, that's not the problem at all. What they have done wrong is the action in itself of going into an online community like the Muppet community and trying to find girls where that they want to go and get laid with when it's clearly uncalled for. Because in that regard right there, like if you're really looking to go and have sex, like if that's your main mission, if you want to go and get laid, then go and find a community that's actually actively looking for that. What Josh and Holly should have done is actually go and find communities that are polyamorous, or if they would go and meet up with a swingers group. If that's specifically what you're looking for, then go and find people who are also actively looking out for that as well. Because what they are forgetting is consent. Like that is absolutely essential to have when you are discussing about these intimate things. And I can guarantee you, you will not find much consent within online fandoms and online communities. It does not work out that way as well. So what you should do, or what they should have done, is go and find communities that do want to give out consent. Like that would be like their main goal technically. So that way they would go and relieve some of that sexual tension that they have within them with them more so than it would be with the Muppet community. Or I'll even go and take it a step further. And I know this sounds absolutely weird, but in this case right over here, I feel like it would be a much better option. I feel like at this point, if Josh and Holly are really desperate to go and find a third player for their intimate games, they should have hired a sex worker. Like, yeah, I know that with sex workers, yeah, it requires money, but trust me, it is a much better alternative, especially when what they are offering is full on consent, so that you wouldn't really get in trouble for that. Like, if you're going to meet up a sex worker, it's simple. Just give them the money. They will give you the services in which you can relieve your sexual tension, and that is it. You will have that little piece of business, and then you are done, at least for that moment right there, if they go and would need that kind of tension. And I know there are those stereotypes in regards to prostitutes and stuff like that, where, like, you know, they could be dirty and, like, you know, and they could be unclean, and that you should check a doctor and stuff like that. But a lot of that is not true. A lot of sex workers are actually very careful, and that they would regularly visit their doctors to see if they are healthy enough to actually go and keep doing to keep doing their jobs on that. So in that regard, like, there are many of them who are legitimately safe, not to mention that condoms are actually very common when they would go and actually do so. So yes, even they are actually careful of those things as well. And I know that, of course, like, when it comes to that topic right there, I know it is very taboo and it has, like, its own set of problems right there. But still, though, I just want to make a big clarification. Joshua going to find a sex worker would be a much better alternative than going into the Muppet History account, find a cute girl among his fans, and go and flirt with them in the hopes of trying to get laid. You know, it is a much better alternative. So honestly, overall with this, I just want to say that, will Josh and Holly become better? Will they learn their lesson about the backlash that they have received? Honestly, I think so. I do believe that they would go and actually improve upon themselves, and that with the therapy that they will take, that it would actually be helpful, and that they'll learn to become better people for it. But one thing I can also guarantee you, they have immediately lost the internet's trust when it comes to handling a major platform. Even when they do become better, I don't think they'll have that second chance. I don't think, like, it's going to take a long time, like over a decade or two, in order for people to feel comfortable again with the idea of having someone like Joshua and Holly to go and actually have a big social media platform like Muppet History and run that and keep doing their thing, at least with what they are doing publicly. And I'll even say, for me, yeah, I've lost my trust with them as well. Like, even if they've improved upon themselves, I don't think I'll be going back to Muppet History anytime soon. And overall, again, I just feel massively disappointed in terms of what we have learned from this. It's just, it really does feel like a massive bummer to hear that, like, what is possibly the most unexpected social media account turned out to be a creep. Or I'll even say that Muppet History is probably the last social media platform that you would expect they would get tangled up into this controversy. All right, so anyways, with that said and done, now I'd like to go onto the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you all think about the Muppet History scandal? Are you as shocked as I am about this? Do you think Joshua would ever get a second chance? Let me know what you all think. All right, let's see now. Toxicity happens in every fandom, especially something very innocent like with the Muppets. This is just disgusting behavior that should have been avoided, but it didn't. I hope that Josh does actually get the help, but never come back to social media ever again. Personally, I do have a follower who's a fan of mine and very beautiful, but here's the thing. I keep my cool and talk to each other like people. It's not that hard. I'm just glad I have people that take care of me. That's the important part. Exactly. I feel like, honestly, like, for most people, unless you're, like, actually into that area that involves, like, that involves sex and stuff like that, you need to separate your online personality and what you do publicly online with what you do that is considered intimate. Like, don't go into the internet, don't go onto social media, and especially don't go amongst your followers that would go and, if you want to, in the hopes that maybe you want to get laid. Honestly, I know that I have many, and I do mean a lot of followers that are absolutely beautiful. But I know that they are definitely off limits if I want to go and actually think about intimacy. I'm not going to go and look among my fans in order to do so. I would rather focus on anything that won't get me in trouble, or especially, I would rather put my focus on my intimacy with someone who is willing to give their consent. All right, let's see what we got here. I had to endure a controversy earlier this year with Dr. Crafty, the former artist of Linkara's title cards, and their equally disgusting behavior. What's with people I try to respect being awful people and their wives defending those monsters? I'm just glad, like that time, the Muppet community came together to call out Joshua for their disgusting behavior. It's the only good thing that happened. So the takeaway of this news is that I hope the victims are okay and that they can heal. The Muppets are effed. Yeah. Oh my God. That is definitely true. And yeah, my heart I forgot to mention this. I am sorry about that, but my heart definitely does go out to Megan and all the victims of Muppet History's behavior. Like that is flat out wrong. And hopefully they won't have to deal with something like that again. Anyways, let's see here. I never follow Muppet History or Josh in general, but I've looked at some of his posts on social media. I hate it when my favorite people turn out to be not who they are. This reminds me of the situation involving Elmo's previous puppeteer, Kevin Clash. Do you remember hearing about the scandal he was allegedly involved with him? Yeah, I did hear about that, and I'll say that situation is like very messy. Even though he's no longer working with the Muppets at Disney, I do know that there are some things that it turns out that, he's proven to actually to maybe be innocent. And that's why Kevin Clash is still working on some of the other Jim Henson productions, or I don't know. That's a whole thing in itself. That's that's controversial. So I'll just leave it at that. Anyways, out of all the downfalls I've seen this year, this is probably the most shocking. Josh was one of my favorite Muppet accounts, basically my main source of Muppet news. To say finding this out is a betrayal is an understatement. I'm going to cap off attaching a picture of Rolf. We all need it right now. And here we go. We got a picture of Rolf. We got one of the goodest of boys and one of the goodest of piano players. All right, let's see. Excuse me about that, folks. The previous burp there. Anyways, let's see what else we got here. I thought the news of Muppet Vision 3D closing down is sad, but with the scandal regarding Muppet History, that immediately went from sad to depressing. What Josh did is really disgusting. I feel disappointed of what he has been doing, and I feel really sorry for the Muppet community figuring it out after about his actions. The Muppet community is all about positivity and laughter, now not getting laid or hit on girls. This is just really sad, man. First Kyle Carosa and now Joshua. Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, Kyle is technically worse, but Josh is still quite awful. All right, I think I'll read one more comment because we are running out of time before the next ad comes up. Let's see. So I've been in a poly relationship. I broke up with my partners because I couldn't handle them emotionally and verbally lashed out. I don't think poly relationships are inherently bad, but Joshua is just a creep and his wife is way too lenient to let him do this stuff. He shouldn't even be flirting with fans regardless of age. Go to a club or something. If you interact with fans, be casual and be nice. I hope if I have a fan base, but I don't go and further than politeness. Yeah, I understand about that. And I mean, overall, yeah, it's not honestly, it's fine if you have a high sex drive and it's fine if you are considered poly, but don't go out of your way to be a creep, okay? So anyways, now that we are done with that, it is now time we're going to go on to our next break. And when we do return, we will be looking into another thing that is controversial, but, well, at least not as bad as what Joshua has done. But still, though, when watching this, it's so stay tuned for that. Okay, welcome back. Now, on our next story, the good news is that it is not as bad as what we have talked about last time. What this thing has done, it's objectively not as terrible as the actions of Joshua Gillespie. The bad news is that, well, it doesn't necessarily make things a lot better. Like, we're just going from ew to ew. It's just, it has its own brand of badness and weirdness. But considering that now it is officially out on the internet, it is now time that we will go and discuss about this. So without further ado, let's go and check out the trailer for the upcoming live action remake, Disney's Snow White. And that is Disney's Snow White, to which the movie shall be coming out in theaters March 21st. And there is a very good chance, by the way, that maybe you have already seen this trailer weeks before it actually came out on the internet, considering that Disney did put this out in theaters before films like Wicked and Moana 2. So if you guys have seen either or, then there is a chance that this Snow White trailer was also included. I could even say for myself, when I went to go and see Moana 2, I actually did go and see the well, I didn't go and see, but I did actually have the Snow White trailer before it. And the funny thing is that at that time, I remember it also had a trailer for Mufasa the Lion King. And when I saw that trailer of Mufasa the Lion King come up, I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't know, man. It's just, But then suddenly, they played the Snow White trailer. And at that point, my mood suddenly switched. And I was like, you know what? I take it back. Mufasa the Lion King doesn't look that bad after all. And I gotta say, from what we have seen in this trailer, it's just, oh boy, we're in for quite a doozy now, aren't we? Yeah, because so far in this trailer, what we have seen, it's like, yeah, it's what you'd expect from these Disney live action remakes. But oh boy, are there extra layers to this now. Now they really go in more and more and more. Like, they're leveling up in terms of the things that make the Disney live action remakes very cringy. And I might as well go and immediately get into what is possibly my biggest problem, the biggest issue that I think with this godforsaken nightmare of a trailer. It has to be, yep, this right here. What the fridge is this? What monstrosities has Disney created? These are CGI beings that there are actual humans that have designed, that have created, that had to animate this. And that there are people who said that this is okay. Now, I am very familiar with some of the controversies that happened beforehand. I remember, I think it was like during the 2022 D23 Expo, in which they presented that apparently the dwarves were completely different. You know, they were originally thinking about like fairies or hippies or something like that. And audiences have reacted quite negatively because, you know, they weren't the seven dwarves that everybody knew and loved. So Disney decided to go and make that significant update in order to give us whatever the fridge this is. Now, I don't know how true that this may be, but I gotta say that if that is actually true, can we go back to that? Can we go back to that, please? Can we just have not this? Can we have anything else? Can we bring back Asha's friends from Wish? I mean, they're obviously a nod to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Can we bring them back and have them replace whatever the fridge this is? Because, oh my goodness, this is a nightmare. I look at this and I wonder, how the fridge are people so focused on Rachel Zegler and not freaking this, man? Like, what is this? Like, what is any of this? You know, I look at some of like, I look at this especially, or like, I even look at this. Like, you look at Grumpy. He looks like he's going to come up to your face and say, I killed God. God is dead, and it's because of me. Like, that's the reason why. It's just so weird, the fact that they want to try to stay true to the designs of the original dwarves, but make them as realistic as possible. It's like, no. Why would you do that? I feel like, honestly, this is a true test to someone's bigotry. If they have more of an issue with Rachel Zegler, more so than they have with this right here, then that is a clue that they may have some racism and misogyny within them. Or what is usually the case, it could be with both. Now, one thing that I will go and confess is that, honestly, I know there's a lot of drama and controversy that surrounds Rachel Zegler, including her position as Snow White, where she did put out some hot takes regarding Snow White, or she would put out some hot takes in general regarding Trump or whatever and stuff like that. She, like, often a lot of people would say that she could be a loose cannon with her mouth, but honestly, I am not as bothered by much. I'm not as bothered with the fact that she is playing Snow White. Yes, she is a Hispanic woman or a Latina woman playing Snow White, who technically is a Caucasian. I mean, there's a reason why she is called Snow White. But then again, I feel like you can make that work out. Like, honestly, if you can have a good script that can go and actually justify that could actually justify having a woman of color play as Snow White, then you could actually make it work. I feel like that is the least of this movie's problems right over here. And Rachel Zegler has already been proven to be a great singer, so I can imagine she can actually do the role pretty well. Besides, honestly, I am not as offended with her being Snow White. Though, like, honestly, what I consider to be much worse is whatever the crap that she did with Spellbound. That movie in itself, I feel like, is way more offensive than Rachel Zegler playing as Snow White right there. And I feel like it's a lot more justifiable to be more upset, considering that she agreed to go and be in a movie that is produced by a notorious creep. So if you're not that upset about that, and yet you are with Snow White, then honestly, the legitimacy of your arguments kind of really died down from there. And also, not to mention, again, there's this that feels like a far bigger issue right over here. This is like absolutely ridiculous what they have developed with the freaking CGI. I'll even include the animals, honestly. Like, the animals just feel so weird. Like they also want to try to make them cartoony as well. And like, you got like these smiling animals right over here. It's like, honestly, why would you go and do this? It just doesn't work. Like, now the Snow White animals are going to be having the same problems as like the Lion King remake and the upcoming Mufasa movie as well, where they're trying to be as realistic as possible, but let's still give them human expressions as well. Let's make them cartoony. Let's make them smiley and, showing off a lot of funny personalities. It's like, no, please, God, no. I mean, I know that when it comes to these Disney live action remakes, the CGI on them are often absolutely horrible. They've even the Disney remakes that are actually okay, honestly, even though the movies can be decent, like, the CGI can be nightmarish. We've seen this with Beauty and the Beast, with the Aladdin remake, with the Will Smith genie, and even recently with the Little Mermaid remake. I mean, I thought that movie was okay, but the CGI on some of the characters like Sebastian and Scuttle, oh my God, or Flounder, in fact, they're just godforsaken awful. And this, I feel like, oh my goodness, do they exaggerate on how bad the CGI can be on them. It doesn't work. No, even that close-up shot of Doc right over here, like, I look at this and I'm like, no, like, please take that thing away. Like, please, for God's sakes, Doc, you're scaring the children. Please put a bag over its head or something like that. Oh my goodness. But There is one thing that I will admit that I actually learned from this trailer is that apparently on top of the classic songs that they will be singing, like Hi Ho, Someday My Wish Will Come, or I'm Wishing, and all that kind of stuff, there's also going to be new songs. In fact, you might have heard a little bit on this trailer right over here, and that's where I have learned that apparently the new songs will be brought to us by none other than Benj Pasek and Justin Paul. Yes, those guys are going to be coming back to provide some new songs. Oh boy, and to make matters worse, am I right? Now, I just want to go out and say that I know they're not the worst songwriters out there, but I'm just personally not a fan of them because it's not that their songs are terrible. It's just that I feel like their songs that they write for movies, they're so bland. Like they feel like the most dull and just unappealing pieces of music that plays it way too safe. Like these are things that are just, they write songs that are just mechanically made for radio. That's really all it is. Like, yeah, they got they got that one good song with This Is Me from The Greatest Showman, but then everything else that they would go and make, like the songs from, like the new songs from the Aladdin remake, or especially the whole soundtrack of La La Land. And now they're going to get this coming up. It's like, oh, for God's sakes, really? And especially the song that I hear, I am not a fan. Like, it honestly feels too modern, too out of place. It feels like something that doesn't belong in godforsaken Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I mean, how can you go from Whistle While You Work and then suddenly have this freaking pop song suddenly pop in? Honestly, no, it just doesn't. I don't feel like it works. Now, if there are some positives that I can go and include, is that I will give it this, even more than the How to Train Your Dragon remake so far. It does look like they're going to try to do something a little bit more than in the original. And what I mean is that they're not going to do like a full-on shot-to-shot remake. They are going to be including elements where they're going to go and actually, expand upon, like try to add some new elements to really spice things up, to have it be a little bit more than just a typical live action remake of Snow White. That like we do see a little bit of a plot line where we got Snow White, whose empathy is going to be taking a stance against the evil queen. Like we do have moments where, like, especially at the end, we see that she stands up against the queen to go and fight, to like compete against her tyranny, to go and fight against her authoritarianism. But then again, like going back to Wish, I already feel like we kind of got that already. So in that regard, it's like, yeah, what point are you trying to make? I already feel like I kind of gotten that already. I mean, it's nice that you do have the effort, and already, again, I feel like it already has that step up compared to what we have gotten from the teaser of the How to Train Your Dragon remake, but it doesn't necessarily build me a lot of confidence that this is going to be worthwhile or if it's going to be good. So overall, with this trailer, yeah, I am not a fan. I am not excited for what's to come with this remake. I mean, there are a few things that I don't necessarily mind, like with Rachel Zegler, and maybe the set design actually does look pretty nice. But everything else, from the nightmarish CG, to the bland new song that they got, it's just, yeah, I feel like this is just going to be another disaster in terms of these live action remakes. And I mean, who knows? This could legitimately be a competitor for the worst of them all. I mean, the bar is already set pretty low with that Dumbo and Pinocchio remake, but there are some signs that maybe the Snow White remake will not be far off. And if you are curious to know how the Snow White remake is going to be, then keep in mind that the film shall be coming out later later next year on May 21st. And with that said, now I would like to go onto the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you all think of the Snow White remake, or the trailer of the Snow White remake that we have been seeing so far? Do you guys disagree with me, and you actually have some hopes for this movie? I know I could say high hopes, but then again, that would be too easy of a pun to go and take. I personally feel like I'm above that. Or are you guys as disgusted as I am? And also, I might as well go and create a little poll here. So I'm just going to go and ask you all, in order to make things a little bit interesting, will you be watching the Snow White remake? So I'll put in yes, and then I'll put in no, and let's see what you guys have to say. So let's go into the chat wall and see the comments over here. All right. I'm running out of things to say about these remakes. First, we have Sexy Villain 1 and 2, then Broken Voice and the Beast, then The Lion King, plus a prequel. Now we have Robert Zemeckis Needs Help, but you can argue that should be the title for all of his movies after Castaway. Ooh, dang, bro, that is a burn right there. Okay. Anyways, that definitely looks like a live action remake of Snow White. I guess the acting is pretty good, except Gal Gadot, but that's part of the course. And the cinematography is fine, but the visuals on the doors look rough, and the new song is pretty lame, where even Rachel Zegler's borderline angelic singing chops can't salvage it. I'm probably gonna give it a pass, but I pray that it's a better Zegler-led fairy tale movie than Spellbound. That's not a high bar, but it's a hope nonetheless. Yeah, oh boy. You know, honestly, even for me, you guys know I am not a fan of Spellbound whatsoever. I mean, yeah, it has nice animation and some of the songs are all right, but the rest is a complete disaster. And even at that, you know, I'm looking at that Snow White remake and I feel like maybe it's like it might be on par. Maybe like the Snow White remake might be a little bit better, but that will not be saying much. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, it looks like an ugly bastardized version of a beloved Disney animated classic. But again, so does every other Disney live-action remake. I was already going to skip this movie, but now I know I made the right call. Rachel Zegler needs a new agent. I'm tired of those kinds of people attacking her the same way they attacked Brie Larson and Daisy Ridley just as much as the rest of you, but she needs to be in better movies than this, Spellbound, and The Hunger Games. Yeah, I mean, like, so far she started off very strong with, or started out all right with, that West Side Story remake. I'm not too big of a fan of that, admittedly. It is a well-made picture, but, you know, like, there are some things that might feel a bit overhyped, but then again, yeah, maybe Rachel Zegler does deserve better. Anyways, I will be very honest with what Rachel Zegler has presented with her portrayal and singing. She does it very well, and as a Hispanic myself, I approve. As for the rest, not so much. The story, I feel like it plays the same. Gal Gadot did a good job as the evil queen, but the dwarves, oh boy, what the heck? I still can't get past how Dopey looks like Alfred E. Newman and Mr. Nebercracker had a baby. It's so horrifying. And by the way, it seems that I do have the results here from the poll I made on Twitch, and it looks like the majority of you will not be watching it. 82% of you have said no, you're not going to go and check out the remake, while only 18% have said yes. You know, honestly, if I would make the choice, I would have said no, but then again, I gotta do my job with my video, so I kind of have to, unfortunately. All right, anyways, I'm just kidding around. Let's see. I have made my decision, and I'm so sorry, Rachel Zegler, my biggest crush, but I'm not watching it this March. It's definitely not because of our beautiful Rachel Zegler. It's actually because I'm sick of these remakes. The only good thing about this is that Alfred E. Newman is portraying Dopey. I'm glad he's getting the recognition he deserves. In all seriousness, These CG designs of the dwarves are ugly and uncanny. I don't want this. It's scary. Yeah, you know, the funny thing is that I will admit, you know, all they have to do is just go and rechange the title. It's not a remake of Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's actually a ride adaptation. It's no different than the Jungle Cruise or the Haunted Mansion. This is actually Snow White's Scary Adventures. I mean, if you go and take a look at freaking Doc and you look at all the godforsaken dwarves, I mean, like, hold on a sec. Where is it? Right over. Yeah. Son of a fish, where are you? Yeah, right over here. You take a look at this. If Snow White is joining them, then that is a guaranteed scary adventure right over there. All right, let's see. I'll read a few more, and then we'll go on to our next break. Let's see now. This trailer looks unpleasant. I'll admit some of the backgrounds look nice, and Zegler and Godot are solid in their roles, and Zegler's singing is beautiful. The CGI on the animals, and especially the dwarves, are horrifying, and it looks no different than the other remakes. Also, I don't care about what takes Rachel Zegler has made. I don't care about what takes Rachel Zegler has made it does not justify the harassment she has gotten, and people who do attack her are bigots and, in their opinion, deserve to be silent. Yeah, honestly, yeah, I have to agree there. Honestly, like, as I stated before, I have no problem with Rachel Zegler being casted in this. Like, I don't care if it is like Snow White or whatever. Again, I do feel like as long as the writing can go and justify it, then you can have a person of color actually portray a Disney princess like Snow White. In fact, I'll even say Disney actually did a pretty good job with the casting of Halle Bailey in The Little Mermaid. But considering all the other things that we are seeing here so far, yeah, honestly, no, there are far worse problems out there than Rachel Zegler being played as Snow White. Let's see now. What else do we have here? Just make sure I don't see, I don't repeat like whatever comments we have. Yeah. I always went into these remakes with an open mind, even though I agree that some, if not most, are completely unnecessary. Snow White looks like another one of those instances. I will admit the film does look nice in places, like the mines and the forest, but what really stands out to me are the people working on it, most namely the writer, Greta Gerwig. Can she make something good out of this? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Wait, Greta Gerwig is the writer of this? Hold on a sec. Just want to double check if they actually did write down something that they mentioned. Honestly, I'm quite surprised. Like, if she is a writer in this, like, I am shocked that they didn't go and, like, highlight that, you know, like from the writer of Barbie or something like that. Anyways, I think I'll read one more comment and then we'll go on to our next break. Let's see. Oh, this is going to be interesting. This is fine. This remake is just a thing that exists. I can't really be mad at it because at least it's trying to be different. Though the dwarves, why couldn't they just get little people to play them? I'm sure a lot of people with dwarfism would want to have some work for roles written for them. Rachel was great as Lucy Gray. I think I'll wait for streaming and stick to Mirror Mirror, even if that has Armie Hammer. Ick. Yeah, exactly. So for those of you who are still morbidly curious to go and check out the Snow White remake, then keep in mind that the movie shall be coming out later on March 21st. And so we're going to go and take another break, and we are actually going to be discussing about another Disney movie, technically the next Disney film that's going to be coming out, and an article that actually presents a very interesting history regarding why they got the director and how he was managing to work on that movie. So stay tuned for that. All right, welcome back. Now, on our next story, yes, we are going to talk about the next Disney live action remake, or technically a movie that is part of the Disney live action remake canon, which is going to be Mufasa the Lion King. As you probably know, the film is actually going to be coming out in a few weeks. And from there is some hype from some people, but I know not many of you are really that excited. Not to mention that, well, considering that I'm speaking to you on the internet, I know for a fact that most of you are way more excited for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. But going back into Mufasa the Lion King, I know there are many questions about that movie, especially when it comes to its director, Barry Jenkins. How the fridge did Disney get Barry Jenkins to go and do this? Why did he say yes? And how did he manage to go and create the movie, despite the fact that his filmmaking style is completely different than what is required to do for something like Mufasa? Well, all those questions and more will be answered in this article here from Vulture called Moonlight in the Lion's Den: Why Barry Jenkins Gave Up His Improvisational Shooting Style to Spend 4 Years Making Mufasa on a Soundstage. And I just want to go and state this right now. This is a fantastic article. If you guys haven't yet, I highly recommend that you go and read this, because it is honestly very interesting how in-depth they went into the creation of this movie, how they went into the making of the film, how Barry Jenkins' team adapted to this new filmmaking style that they got to go and do for this, how the team handled motion capture for some of the characters, how Barry Jenkins was feeling throughout all this. You know, it really goes in depth into everything. And I'll even say this, that you don't have to be interested in Mufasa the Lion King to go and read this. Like, even if you don't care about it, even if you're not interested, even if you think you're gonna hate the movie, I feel like it is still very fascinating to look into in order to understand what's been going on behind the scenes, and especially the big question to go and ask: what was Barry Jenkins thinking when he decided to get on board with Mufasa the Lion King? And that was one of the first things that they actually addressed, because Barry Jenkins knows very well that it does seem very out of left field for him to go and actually direct Mufasa the Lion King, because he is much more used to working with smaller budgets and working in live action with like practical elements, with like real sets, with real people, and all that kind of stuff. And he has managed to gather great praise, especially for the movies that he has directed, with films such as Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, and several others as well. So why would he go and accept a movie that has like a budget of 9-digit figures, that there are literally no human actors that he could go and work with, and not to mention no actual sets that he could go and develop? In a way, like, Barry Jenkins is full on making an animated feature with this, which is honestly kind of funny, because in this article, very rarely do they ever use the word animation, and they would often describe Mufasa the Lion King as an all-digital picture, even though we understand the term is actually computer animation. Yes, the way that they would go and do it is a little bit more different than your typical computer animated feature, but still, though, it is the kind of thing that I feel like, yeah, you know what? You're actually doing something that is like, it still counts as animation, considering the fact that if there is nothing that you see in there is real, if it's all computer generated, then it's an animated film. Don't fool yourself. Even if the style is like hyper realistic, it still technically counts as animation. But anyways, going back to what I was talking about, having Barry Jenkins entering upon Mufasa the Lion King, this is something that, like, yeah, it feels weird to everyone, especially to movie fans. Like, he pretty much stated that he cannot say anything online or say anything publicly without having at least one person to remind him that he is working on Mufasa the Lion King. He even stated, like right over here, in which he says, reading from my source here on Vulture, by the way, I can't tweet about the Super Bowl without somebody reminding me that I'm making this effing film. I can't. So anyways, what is it with Barry Jenkins working on the movie? Why did he accept to work on Mufasa? Well, the interesting thing about that is that they did mention that, well, like, number one, there is like kind of the initial thing that at first he read the script and he actually liked it. But interestingly, he mentioned that at first he wasn't that interested. Like, he heard that Disney was interested in bringing him on board to go and make the movie, but he didn't really care all that much. He was like, okay, like, yeah, I'll just like, flip through the pages of the script, and then I'll tell my agent for him to go tell Disney, or for them to go and tell Disney no. But then suddenly he started reading the script and he read more and more of the pages, and he was like, you know what? I'm kind of digging this. Yeah, I actually like it. He was actually impressed with the script. And from there, that's where initially he actually said yes. But there are actually a few other reasons as well. In a way, Disney actually caught him at the perfect time, because he was at a moment in his life where he needed some changes and wanted to really go and settle down and work on something that is completely different than his usual filmmaking style. In fact, it was actually in a passage, if I could find it, it's like, yeah, right over here, because it is actually related to, one, his relationship to his partner, Lulu Wang, and two, it was actually based on the last project that he worked on called the Underground Railroad, which actually was a very, very, very messy production. So to go and read you again in my source on Vulture, it says that it wasn't necessarily the chance to affect a new medium that tipped the crew in favor of Mufasa, though that increasingly became a draw. Jenkins say they were all at a point in their lives where they were willing to trade chaos for control. They had just ground their way through post-production on the Underground Railroad, a project so complex, expensive, and framed with behind-the-scenes drama that, had a few more things gone wrong, it could have ended up being Jenkins' own Heaven's Gate. Jenkins tells me that 8 weeks before, he and his team had a shot of frame. After having built the titular railroad set first, we realized we were tens of millions of dollars over budget, and it was our own doing. The Underground Railroad was ultimately completed in a manner befitting Jenkins' own original vision, but not without ruthless triage, including filming the entire series in Georgia rather than across multiple states. Plus oversight from a new line producer hired by Amazon, who was tasked with helping them make the show with the money they had left. Amazon MGM Studios did not respond to a request for comment. And then he also stated, after all that anxiety, the idea of doing an entirely digital movie didn't sound so bad. Jenkins also thought it would be good for his personal life to work in Los Angeles, where he shares a house with Wang, because even though he'd been in the relationship for 2 years at that point, they were often geographically separated, with me in Georgia and Lulu in Hong Kong or wherever. In short, I needed to slow the F down. So for him, it was pretty much important that he needed to work on a project where he could take it easy on himself and to go in a production where it wasn't as chaotic as the Underground Railroad. Again, it was a moment where for Disney, it felt like all the stars and planets were aligned, where it made it into a perfect opportunity where they could get someone like Barry Jenkins on board. Any other time, however, it would not have worked. Like if it were straight after Moonlight, for example, he would have immediately shot it down. But after going through all those experiences and at that specific moment in his life, he felt like, honestly, working on something like Mufasa the Lion King was for the best for him, for his career, and for his personal life overall. So that went and ultimately answered the question as to why is it that Barry Jenkins actually said yes. It's actually multiple factors, more so than what people may initially think that, oh, Disney gave him a really big check and he said yes for the money. It's not just that. It's just so many different factors. And from there, a big bulk of the entire article, it actually describes about the journey that Jenkins' team would go through in order to go and actually make the movie, and how they tried to go and adapt into this new medium to them, to try out this brand new challenge of trying to go and create Mufasa the Lion King, how it is so contrastly different than what they would go and regularly do with stuff like Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk. But at the same time, they also found some similarities as well. It's just understanding, like, where they can feel comfortable with what they are doing, but using different mediums as well. Because with Mufasa the Lion King, they could still do that same kind of cinematography and that same kind of filmmaking style that Barry Jenkins is known and loved for. But this time around, they just have to do it virtually. They just have to go and work with virtual cameras in order to go and do their things, and try to also embrace the imperfections as well. Again, like, they really go into detail about how they would go and how they would try to adapt into that filming process. And by the way, I do notice there is a little bit of that concern about spoilers. Don't worry, they did not spoil anything in this article right over here, so you should be perfectly fine. And on top of that, Barry Jenkins even mentioned that for him, it feels easier than expected to go and adapt, considering that he is a big gamer as well, considering that you would have to have a little bit of the video game mentality in order to adapt yourself onto how they would go and create this movie. That in a way, it is a little bit like a game, but you as the player, you're more like a filmmaker trying to capture like the perfect moment of each shot that has been created by the visual effects and animation team. And on top of that, they even mentioned that Jenkins and the team actually did get help from some other filmmakers who actually had a lot of experience working on that kind of environment, working on CG heavy films. Like, he would go and have some help from Jon Favreau. Of course, no big surprise from Jon Favreau, considering that he did create the 2019 Lion King remake, but he also got help from Matt Reeves as well. And also, he got a lot of help from an old friend of his, which is Wes Ball, the same guy who did the Maze Runner films, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and also the upcoming Legend of Zelda movie. So he did get some assistance on how to go and actually create a very CG heavy film such as The Lion King, and how to go and actually adapt to not having any people to actually work with. And funny enough, it's also worth mentioning, by the way, that the closest that he has ever gotten to actually working with people onto the sets and working on The Lion King, or on Mufasa the Lion King, or at least in terms of like actually working in terms of his like little comfort zone, is not just necessarily with just the cinematography, but also with the actors. That they would start off recording the actors doing their voiceover work, and then from there, they would go and accumulate all the voiceover lines and then create a whole animatic out of it, to have a little bit of a rough idea of how the movie is going to sound and how the characters are also going to be with their performances, which also does help out the motion capture actors to go and actually help out with like how they would go and execute their performance, like how is their body language going to match up with how the actors have done with their voices. So they really go in depth into it. So that's why that's why I've said before that even if you're not interested in the movie itself, if you are an aspiring filmmaker, then this is highly recommended to go and read to see the experience of how someone who is known for making small budgeted live action movies would suddenly switch up and create this to create this big budgeted CG heavy film. And overall, I might as well go and highlight what is the biggest takeaway that many people took from this. And if you heard about this article, then there's a very good chance you've also heard some of the concluding thoughts that happen at the end. And that is regarding if they want to go and do this again. And the biggest comment that Barry Jenkins said is, it's not my thing. That after having that whole experience, he's not really happy with doing stuff like this, and he just wants to go back working on live action. Now, to go and point out specifically where he has said that, it is actually, I'm trying to go and find it. Yeah, it's actually right over here. And it actually states, it's not my thing. Jenkins said, or actually just out of curiosity, you know what? No, I'll go into this whole art, this whole like these two paragraphs, I think it's worth reading like both of them together. When I asked members of Jenkins' inner circle whether they are to make a movie like this again, the response is a measured expression of reluctance. It seems clear that as much as they appreciate having conquered a novel filmmaking experience and acquired new abilities, they're likely not doing another all-digital movie next, not another with a 9-figure budget. Romansky, one of the filmmaking partners of Barry Jenkins, says there's a possibility that Jenkins will direct a biopic about choreographer Alvin Ailey for Fox Searchlight, and that it's not going to be a $250 million movie, right? So we're going to have to go back to embracing a much more limited tool set on that film. And then Barry Jenkins said himself, "It is not my thing," says of all digital filmmaking, then repeats more empathetically, "It is not my thing. I want to work the other way again, where I want to physically get everything there. I always believe that what is here is enough, and let me just figure out what is the chemistry to make alchemy. How could these people, this light, this environment come together to create an image that is moving, that is beautiful, that creates a text that is deep enough, dense enough, rich enough to speak to someone? He can't do that in a studio, even now." So basically, to go and highlight this, a lot of people would go and take that "it's not my thing" comment, and they would think that, oh, Barry Jenkins hated working on Mufasa the Lion King, and as a result, Mufasa the Lion King is going to be a disaster. He did not say that at all. Barry Jenkins and the team behind it, they appreciated doing that new experience. It's just, after having that experience, it's not necessarily their thing. Because one of the big goals of Mufasa the Lion King for them is for them to go and actually try something new, to try something different, to try to expand their filmmaking skills where they could go and experiment and get out of their comfort zone to go and actually develop something that if they could see that they could go and adapt their filmmaking style into something that is completely different than what they would regularly do. And honestly, in that regard, I do applaud that effort. I do applaud the fact that they're willing to go and get out of their comfort zone to try something that is completely different than what they are known for. But then after they tried it, they would go and say, you know what? I think I prefer doing the limited resources of making small budgeted movies, with not much that you can work with, than something like this, where you would have like a stupidly large budget and that the sets and all the characters and everything is all digital, They're not saying that they hated the experience. It's just that they prefer what they would regularly do, but they are happy that they still tried it regardless. But there is honestly one thing that I will admit is actually funny from the article, but they actually did state that there is one way for Barry Jenkins to actually go back into that style of filmmaking. And believe it or not, it's actually with the Muppets. So I just want to go and read you the last bit right over here, because honestly, it's actually pretty funny. But at the same time, Jenkins doesn't rule out the possibility of using Mufasa methods to figure out new ways to make Barry Jenkins movies. Somehow we landed on the subject of the Muppets, and suddenly he's imagining how he could direct puppet performers and transpose them onto virtual sets. You know, a Muppet movie done like in this style would be awesome. Awesome! In the same way we generate our PlayStation version of a scene. You could have a set that's just the actual physical puppeteers and Muppets are blocking the scenes, but just in a black box, you know? He says, or let's say a green box. You're capturing their performances and then you're putting them all into virtual sets. I could see how that could work. And the funny thing is that that has already been proven to work. Like the Muppets have already done that before. That is exactly the case with Muppets Haunted Mansion. Considering that they had to go and, they had to go and create that during the pandemic. They actually went and created an all virtual set. It's not like the Muppets actually went into the attraction at Disneyland or Disney World to go and film it. They had to go and actually create the entire sets virtually and just have the Muppets and maybe sometimes some of the actors to go in there as well. So, I mean, like Barry Jenkins is already, like, he could already see that vision working, but it has already been proven to have worked. But overall, I just want to say it really is a fascinating article to go and read from a filmmaker's perspective to really look into, not just specifically in regards to Mufasa the Lion King, but it is a fascinating story of a filmmaker who's known to work with limited resources, suddenly giving him all the resources in the world, creating a completely different style of movie that is completely out of his comfort zone, and how they would go and try to tackle it. And honestly, it's very admirable. Admittedly, it doesn't give me any high hopes. It doesn't give me any hype for Mufasa the Lion King, but it does admittedly give me extra respect for Barry Jenkins and his filmmaking crew in terms of taking on this massive challenge. So if you guys have not read the article, highly recommend you do so. Okay, now with that said, I would like to go onto the chat wall and I'd like to ask you all, what do you all think about the Vulture article about Mufasa the Lion King? Do you have any additional comments you would like to go and make on Mufasa the Lion King, on Barry Jenkins? I would like to know what you all think. All right, so let's see what we got here. Reading the article the other day, I will admit that it gave me a lot of cool details onto how the movie like this is made. And seeing him and his team reaction to making it doesn't necessarily mean the film is going to be bad or that they hate doing it. It seems they did learn a lot when working on it. While I don't think they'll go and do something like this big again, I wouldn't be surprised if they use what they have learned for future films. By the way, congrats on Barry and Wang on getting married this past weekend. Oh, wow. Already they got married? Oh, well, congratulations. Awesome. Anyways, let's see now. Yeah, the making of the Mufasa prequel is far more interesting than the movie itself. I'll be honest, this is one of those live-action Disney movies I'm actually interested in checking out, all because of Barry Jenkins. He has an amazing filmography, and it's a big risk for him for making a movie like this. But I'll be very cautious about it since Disney would try to be controlling over movies that doesn't let the filmmakers be creative. This looks like a good read, especially as a newcomer, or a newcomer to filmmaking. I definitely understand that. This definitely is a fascinating article. Barry Jenkins had definitely proven he could be a very talented director, especially after he did Moonlight. And I could definitely understand why he would want to direct a big movie for Disney. However, despite this, it still doesn't change the fact that I'm honestly not looking forward to this, and I'm more excited for Sonic 3. Granted, after watching Snow White trailer, I'm looking at Mufasa and acting like Thanos and being like, perhaps I've treated you too harshly. Exactly. Like, this article is not meant to be like a promo to Mufasa the Lion King. Admittedly, it doesn't do that great of a job for that, but it's an article that helps add some respect to Barry Jenkins. Like, yeah, I know it's a controversial move for him to go and create this movie after making highly acclaimed films like If Beale Street Could Talk and Moonlight, but still, though, it is a massive risk, and honestly, I applaud him for doing that. All right, let's see what other comments are there. I'll be honest, the more I learn about the live action productions, the more I question whether they are actually cheaper to make. Jenkins explaining his reasoning for taking Mufasa makes sense to me. Honestly, animation feels more like you, the creator, have more control over the environment, world, characters, and so I wish more filmmakers would push for animation as their medium of choice. Of course, there's a lot of circumstances that some people prefer live action, but yeah. Well, I mean, technically with this, like, as they say, it is all digital. Barry Jenkins is technically working on an animated movie. It's just that with Mufasa the Lion King, sure, the way they would go and create it, it's a bit more unorthodox than your typical computer animated film. But I think with this, the only sad news that I got from this is that there is a now the chances are very unlikely that Barry Jenkins would go and create an animated movie. All right, I think I'll read one more comment and then we're going to go on to our final break and the grand finale. Anyways, honestly, this really just changed the mood of how I feel for Mufasa's movie. In fact, I even find myself kind of impressed from this. I'm still not sure how the movie will turn out, but this really turned my feelings from thinking this will suck to maybe this film has potential. Not entirely, though. It still has some issues upon what they presented, but I do respect the honesty and the details. Also, congratulations to the married couple. Hey, if there is one good thing to take from it, I mean, hey, Barry Jenkins and Lulu Wang are now officially married. So, I mean, bravo to them. And I mean, I think it's safe to say that in itself feels like a bigger accomplishment than Mufasa the Lion King. All right, so with that said, we're going to go back onto one more break. And when we do return, there is another movie in which we will learn the behind-the-scenes story of how it is made. But unlike Mufasa the Lion King, we're going to talk about a new movie that was recently released. In fact, it is currently the biggest animated movie that is currently in theaters right now. And now, everyone, it is time that we will go and conclude this episode with the grand finale. And for this grand finale, it's going to be a little bit similar to the previous story that I talked about, to which we will be looking into the behind the scenes into how a certain Disney movie got made. But unlike Mufasa the Lion King, we're actually going to be looking into Disney Animation's latest movie, Moana 2. And it's very interesting to go and discuss about Moana 2, considering that it has that very unique aspect of the fact that originally it was supposed to be a Disney Plus series, but then Disney decided to switch things up and turn it into the animated sequel that we have today that is currently dominating the box office. It is worth noting, by the way, for that update on how Moana 2 is doing, so far it is still going extremely well. In fact, not only did it cross $300 million domestically at the box office, but so far its total has also passed $600 million. And very soon, as I'm recording this, the second Moana will soon surpass how much the original Moana made back in 2016. But to go back into the subject that I am talking about here, yes, how did Disney go and... what the fridge is this? Okay, I'm gonna go and answer that later. Sorry, folks, I should have muted that. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. Yes, the whole thing with Moana 2 is that how is it that Disney turned that from a series to a movie? Well, this was actually answered right over here on this podcast, specifically the writers panel with Ben Blacker. Ben Blacker recently put out a new episode of his podcast where he talked to one of the writers and directors of the film, Dana Ledoux Miller, discussing about her journey into making Moana 2, how she got involved in this, and especially highlighting how is it that Disney, again, transformed the Moana series that was meant for Disney Plus into Moana 2, the feature film that is currently dominating the box office. And I'm not going to go and make you listen to the whole thing. Again, I highly recommend that you go and actually take a listen to the episode. It's actually very interesting. And much like the last time, it is it's honestly a very good listen for the sake of listening to the filmmaker more so than for the movie itself. If you are an aspiring writer, then I highly recommend you go and take a listen to the writers panel and listen to Dana Ledoux Miller's story. But to go and give you a highlight of what they talked about, there's actually this Reddit post here that actually summarized what happened during the production of Moana 2. And to go and read you right over here, it says, for anyone reading this who's curious and doesn't want to listen, she confirms the timeline as follows. Writer Ledoux Miller was brought in on February of 2023. It was still a TV show at this point. Worth noting is that she had just finished scripting the live-action version at this stage. So Moana 2 did not exist until well after the live-action had begun production. She turned in several revisions for the TV show during 2023. Now, to go and expand and clarify what this has specifically talked about, well, number one is about the notion that apparently, here, I'll just specifically highlight this part here, is specifically mentioning how apparently Moana 2 didn't exist until well after the production of the live-action Moana remake that's coming out in 2026. I mean, technically, that's not necessarily true because what happened during the production of the Moana series now officially counts as the production of Moana 2. So in that regards, what Jared Bush previously stated about how Moana 2 and the Moana live action remakes both started at the same time, that is still technically true right there. But the thing with Dana Ledoux Miller, she was originally brought on board to be a script supervisor or as a creative consultant, considering that she is mainly known to have worked on shows or be like the creator or the showrunner of shows such as Tide Cave Rescue, Kevin Can F Himself, and Narcos, which is kind of weird when you think about those shows. If you know what they are, it's kind of like a weird transition of going from that to suddenly working on Moana 2. Originally, she was sent in as a script supervisor, mainly to work as a, when it was just as a TV series. That was like her main role, to go and check out the scripts to make sure if they could be ready for Disney Plus. But now going back to the next point, then here's a very interesting thing. September of 2023, Jared Bush first started mooting the idea of it being a feature film. She mentions that this was an off-the-record discussion and that the expectation of the staff was that they'd be done with the last episode by late summer and fall. Now, this right over here is actually very interesting because you would think that, it was an executive decision to turn Moana into a movie, or the Moana series into Moana 2. It's Bob Iger's decision in order to make more money. It's Disney's decision in order to make things up for the money that they lost on Strange World and Wish and stuff like that. But no, it actually all started with Jared Bush, where he first had the idea. Like, at the beginning, he was playing around with the notion if maybe he would go and actually do that. But, apparently he's the one who had the brainchild to go and actually turn that into a feature film, which is honestly very shocking. And not to mention that this is way before he became the chief creative officer he is today. This is long before that. This was still when Jennifer Lee was still the creative head of Disney Animation. So in that regard, yes, I know that with Jared Bush, he was still the executive producer, even when or you can correct me if I'm wrong if that's not the case, but, you know, he was involved with the production and he was an executive producer even when it was a series. But still, though, it seemed very fascinating that, you know, that Jared Bush is the one who actually had the idea of taking the whole series and then turning it into a movie, especially when Miller did clarify that it seems like a logical move considering that the Moana 2 series was already like this entire linear story. So it feels like it would make sense if you would go and like translate that into a feature film because you already got a linear plot line. You know, it's not like with Milo's Return or Belle's Magical World where they'd had these episodic episodes that don't really connect with one another. And then then suddenly Disney would just jumble them up together and just sell that as a movie. So there is that as well. And then there is this part right over here, where in late 2023, the switch was officially made into a feature film, and staff were given the official call in January of 2024. Miller says that there was panic when the release date was locked onto November 27th, and the crew moved forward with a hope and a prayer. So this pretty much proved and pretty much answers the big question, how did Disney turn the Moana series into Moana 2? The answer, very frantically. And it was kind of like a last minute decision where it even occurred after their last movie, Wish, was released. So from there, that like they didn't go into the specifics into why they officially made that decision or what triggered them to go and officially made that switch. But considering that the idea was already there to begin with, that's when they decided, okay, you know what? Let's go and actually do this. Let's go and actually create the change. And from there, when the team at Disney Animation actually heard that they were going to do that switch, that's when they panicked, like, oh crap, we got less than a year to take all the materials that we have and try to turn that into a movie. Which, I mean, in the history of animation, this is not the first time that we have heard of this. I mean, yeah, it's pretty unique to hear that they're taking a series and try to condense that into a movie, but we have heard stories before, such as with films like Frozen 2 or Toy Story 2, or I'd even throw in the Spider-Verse films where they would be pretty frantic, like when they're in that final lap and try to like cobble up the whole movie together. And there are some results that could actually, it would even work out in the end. Like the films themselves would not only be big hits, but they would even be critically praised as well. And there are definitely a lot of examples that they would go and actually provide on that. But anyways, here's another example. Going back into what I was talking about here, there is, of course, February of 2024 when it was publicly announced that they would go and do Moana 2. And then from there, Miller confirms that all the film's major set pieces with the giant clam, Matangi, and Nalo, technically the villain of the movie, had already been built and made for the TV show, so they had to be used in order to raise costs. And I think, honestly, it's with those aspects that where it really shows that the storytelling feels absolutely rushed and that, they already got those things already made. And I got to say, those are already made beautifully well, at least in terms of the animation. But it did feel like, we're not going to go and create new characters for this movie. So we need to find a way to take the elements that we have already built and try to really cram them into this movie. And I think this really is the case with Matangi especially. I feel like Matangi is one of the best examples in Moana 2 where it shows how they really tried to condense an entire series worth of a story into a 90-minute film, so much so that it feels like the storytelling is just absolutely rushed. And with Matangi, I'm not gonna lie, I actually really enjoyed her. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I really feel like, honestly, she has a great outgoing personality. Her song Get Lost was actually pretty fun. And from there, Like, I feel like she had a lot of great potential in the feature, and I'm not gonna lie. If they had expanded upon the character, if they showed more of her, then she would have honestly crossed the line where she would enter into waifu material. I'm not gonna lie. But then suddenly, with how the movie would go and handle her, it's just that honestly, they didn't really do the character justice because it was just very rushed. It just felt very sudden in the movie where suddenly she decided, oh, I'm going to help you out, Moana. And it's like, okay, is this a trick? And it's like, oh, no, wait. Oh, okay. Oh, I guess she did help her. Okay, bye. And then that's it. But yeah, so honestly, there is that example of how, yeah, like there are some things that are already made for the Moana series, but they don't want to put that to waste, so they had to go and include that onto the feature film. But then moving on, there is also, and I guess this is technically the final part because the last bullet point they say is the release of this. But then there is this part right over here in which Miller shares an amusing and also rather telling anecdote where Jared Bush instructed them on how to organically move into the I Want song. And the writers went, the what? Okay, this is not really true. If you actually do listen to what Miller said in the podcast, it's actually a little bit more different. She's not speaking for all the writers in there. She's mainly speaking for herself, mainly because this is technically her first movie that she really got involved into creating. In fact, this is like her directorial debut, in fact. So so while she is being the director of the film, while also being one of the major writers, this is actually her first experience, not just working like on a major movie like this, but also working on a Disney animated musical. And Jared was being her mentor, where he's showing her the ropes on how to properly go and organically form a Disney story, to go and actually create a Disney musical and how to like place the songs in a way that it would actually make sense. And even mentioning the I Want song, which I believe they're referring to Beyond. Like, yeah, that was just a little bit of an example of like, how do you go and like properly place a song like Beyond or something like Can I Get a Chi-Hu or Get Lost or anything like that? How you can go and integrate that, yeah, I know some people could go and debate that maybe it's not the best way for Disney to go and do so. Like, it's not Disney's best musical, of course, but still though, it is telling that it is from at least one of the directors. It's from someone new and trying to learn how to go and actually create a proper Disney movie. So overall, I will say, again, this is a great episode of that podcast. Again, I highly recommend you go and listen to it, but it does present an example as to what happened during the production, and it does shine a bit of a light of what happened behind the scenes. And, as you guys probably know, if you watch my videos, then you probably have seen my review. And honestly, I do find it to be okay. It was a decent effort. I do find it to be better than what Disney would do with the live action remakes, but I don't think it was like a cinematic disaster as like what some clickbait titles would go and exaggerate it to be. I thought the movie was fine, and I mean, honestly, I don't have much to really complain about or get upset about, because honestly, I'll take Moana 2 over Spellbound any day of the week. But still, it is an example, but at least it does shine a light as to what happened behind the scenes, and that yeah, the production did seem a little bit messy in terms of how to go and transform an entire series, try to go and condense it into an animated feature. That, yeah, the road was, it was not smooth. Like, there are times when it could be pretty bumpy, but hey, at least they made it to the finish line. And I mean, say what you will about Moana 2. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people liked it, some people really didn't, and some people thought it was mid. But at the same time, you cannot deny that the move actually worked. As I said before, Moana 2 is currently a major hit, and it is currently Disney Animation's biggest hit since Frozen 2 back in 2019. This is their first post-pandemic movie that actually did very well at the box office. So overall, I just feel like this is a story that is worth mentioning. I remember, actually, it was today that a fan of mine actually messaged me and said, hey, you should talk about this. And honestly, I looked at it and I thought, you know what? That sounds like a pretty good idea. So I just want to say thank you to them. And I just thought it would be an interesting discussion and also to learn a little bit about the behind the scenes of what did happen during Moana 2. All right, so with that said, now I would like to go onto the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what did you all think about that little behind-the-scenes story of Moana 2? Do you feel like now it makes a lot of sense of what happened behind the scenes? Did you guys enjoy Moana 2? Or especially, let me know what you think about Moana 2 and what we have learned in terms of the behind the scenes, if it makes sense of how it all turned out. Let me know what you think. All right. This is definitely interesting. The fact that decision to turn the Moana series into a movie is crazy. And honestly, there is a part of me that does wish they would have kept this as a Disney series because, or as a Disney Plus series because of how parts of the movie feel rushed. However, despite this, I would gladly still take an okay Moana sequel over an unnecessary Moana live action remake. Seriously, those screenshots make it look 10 times worse. Oh, I know what you mean. And yeah, honestly, I do agree as well. I do think, this should have definitely stayed as a Disney Plus series, but that doesn't mean that I find the movie to be bad. Let's see now. I'm actually surprised that it was Jared Bush's idea to make the Moana series into a sequel to Moana 2. When I saw Jared at the studio back in October of 2023, I didn't realize he was busy working on 2 movies, this and Zootopia 2. What I'm going to say is that Moana 2 is basically a side project for Disney Animation, while Zootopia 2 is the big project before Frozen 3 and 4 takes over the studio. From what I've heard from Jennifer Lee, they are working on both at the same time. So yeah, it's no big difference. Interesting. And honestly, I'm just going to say this right now. Honestly, I would not be surprised if Zootopia 2 actually turns out to be amazing. If Disney wants to find a way to, or if Disney Animation wants to find a way to win back audiences, it would definitely be with Zootopia 2. I mean, it's not like, it doesn't have the same production history as Moana 2. It's not like a series turned into a movie. And not to mention, Byron Howard, one of my favorite Disney directors, is going to be working on that. Honestly, I feel like they got a potential winner with that. Anyways, let's see what else we got here now. The story reminds me of Frozen 2 and Emperor's New Groove. Looks like Moana 2 will be a billion-dollar hit. I appreciate the effort of turning the series into a movie. I have one question, though. Could Moana 2 gain a cult following? Honestly, it could. It definitely can. I mean, yeah, you're going to get the people have the initial reactions right now, but give it time and you'll see maybe in the future, maybe there will be people who will actually love it. And I mean, honestly, take a look at Kung Fu Panda 4, for example. Yeah, it didn't turn out well when it first came out and people got upset over it, but it did have a little bit of its audience. And like I said before with Logan, you got Jen that already got her own fan base. And I mean, who knows? Maybe Matangi will have the same kind. I wouldn't mind joining in that one. All right. Anyways, well, I didn't feel that surprised they turned the series into a movie, but I didn't think it would come out to be this badly either. I haven't seen it yet, but I was hoping they'd taken their time to make the film more sympathetic and epic than what it came out to be. It really saddens me that Disney just dropped from their quality. I can only hope if this comes in media that they kept all the show parts, although I'd just be happy Tangled didn't have the same fate. Imagine how that would have been. Well, I mean, you said it yourself. You haven't seen it yet. You're only basing that opinion based on what you have only heard on the internet. Let me just say, just go and watch it, and then you can go and form your own opinion. It's like what I said to Logan last week in regards to Wish, which, by the way, I do have an update on that because because after that podcast I did with him last week, I did convince him to go and watch Wish, and he actually said that it was all right. I mean, he hated Valentino. He didn't think it was amazing, but he actually enjoyed the film. He actually, he told me he did not regret watching it. There are some bits that he actually did like, and he felt like maybe what the internet said is like kind of exaggerated. So honestly, I kind of felt proud of myself for actually doing that. And I mean, the same thing will be with Moana 2. If you haven't seen that yet, don't immediately base your judgment on it based on what people say on the internet. Go and see it for yourself, and then you can go and form your opinion on that. Let's see now. I think I'll read one more comment and then we'll go from there. Let's see. Okay, you know what? I'll go with you. I will say, as much as I think Moana 2 is all right, the journey of how they turned the series into a sequel sounds pretty crazy. It's surprising that Jerry Bush came up with that than the executives. Again, Moana 2 is all right, but I'll still take that over Spellbound. Just be happy that Moana overshadows that Netflix film, unlike last year with Leo. Oh, yeah. I think we can all agree on that. And with that said and done, that should do it for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And what a fun-filled episode that was, man. I had a great time in this, and I hope you all had a great time as well. And tune in next week, for we will have more crazy stories that could come in AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, and, well, I mean, in the animation world and in entertainment in general, or whatever madness is going to come our way. Don't worry, we will go and talk about it. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed this episode and you want to follow more of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, then don't forget to go and subscribe to the AniMat Live Twitch channel and the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel. But also, if you are listening to whatever podcast service you're listening to, then don't forget to follow me on there as well, whether it be on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and more. And with that said and done, I'd like to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes.